Okay, so moving on to the third keynote on a business leadership. We have a great person coming from business world. His name is Amitabh Satyam. Amitabh Satyam is an expert in areas of telecom, Internet of Things, which is talked about these days, and analytics. A graduate from Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, with MBA from Fisher College of Business, United States. Amitabh was earlier the managing partner at SAP and a global consulting leader for telecom and Internet of Things at IBM. Amitabh started his career on Wall Street as an investment analyst at Morgan Stanley Smith Barney. Later, he was operations head at Reliance Info Communications, managing director at Mobiapps, and vice president at Siemens. Amitabh has also taught at the Ohio State University and at Rider University in United States for 4 years. He grew up in Shior in Bihar, India, near Nepal border. Amitabh is currently focused on setting up the Smart City Research Institute and has co-authored the book, The Smart City Transformation, that is due to appear in the bookstores mid-December. Let's put our hands together to welcome Mr. Amitabh Satyam to deliver his keynote on evolution of business leadership. Sir, over to you.
Thank you very much. It was very inspirational to... No, that's not working. So it was very inspirational to hear Ram Madhavji, who I met for the first time, but he's been following him for decades, like a hero. He's been to me. And then obviously Tejaswini ji, we just heard. I have had the opportunity of visiting her facility several times. I had meals there, an excellent tasting meal. I don't know how she does it with such a small amount of investment. So coming back to the topic we have today, so I think the way it was intended by Samir and others is that they take a social entrepreneurship, a political view perspective, historical perspective, and also a business perspective about how to connect India, Indianness with the business world. So that's what I'm talking about. So this is something I hear all the time. So I just wanted to present this to you, that if you are in the business world, and it's I don't know many of you do that or not, but this is the standard thing. Every time you talk about Indianness or anything relating to India, it's like, what the hell, doesn't sound like you should be talking like that. That's not you. And so starting with that statement, that I'm going to use that as a foundation to discuss and develop some more ideas. And so I'll just share some of my experience and observations of how I have experienced working in the US and in India and the people's mindset about business and culture. I'll pick two areas within my observation: education and business. So the reason I say education is the foundation for all of us, the way we think, the way we deal with people, the deal with society, and how I believe our education system is contributing to that. And that leads to our corporate behavior. So that's two things. And then I'll just talk a little bit about why, and then I have some ideas what I'm sharing with you, what we can do. So for coming back to this, the two things I have highlighted, Padh Likhkar and post, like Bade Post. So if you are very well educated, then you are supposed to be uprooted from your culture, right? Because you should not be talking about who you are, because you are so well educated. I mean, education is supposed to take you away from your culture, your society, your dharma, and all of that. So typically in education in India means you upgrade to another culture. So you're born into a certain family, you have a, depending on whether it's urban or rural, rich or poor, everybody wants to send their children to a school. I shouldn't say everybody, but I would imagine majority, to send us to a school where they're saying, you know what, I don't want my child coming out of the school and still speaking in Kannada to me. He should be wearing tie and a jacket and speak a foreign language. To me, that's how I define education. Most middle class, even lower class parents are focused on that. And upper class is already converted, so we don't even talk about them. And similarly, you upscale. So there is I'm talking about the scale that goes up. So when you say upgrade and upscale, there is a value judgment involved there. That we believe something is lower and something is higher. And by education, we try to upgrade and upscale ourselves to that next level. And then if you see the modern kids today walking around in Koramangala or Rechisar or wherever, their food, their music, their language, language was already in one, language was acquired, or language challenge was overcome already several years ago. Everybody speaks in English now. Now the focus is on accent. How close you are able to do the accent, only then you are considered good. Otherwise, English everybody speaks, even the taxi guys does. So now the war has come to the next level now. All right? And similarly, we say, this Indian narrow-mindedness, what kind of century are we living in? So if you talk about anything that relates very closely to your culture, whether food habits, you're eating with hand, or maybe wearing a dhoti, or how many of you have gone to a pub wearing a dhoti? You don't, right? Because that doesn't match with the culture. Drinking has nothing to do with culture, right? Indians have been drinking for centuries and millennia, but then we don't. They won't even let you enter. Actually, they think you are whatever. There's a class attached to it. The people who wear dhotis. So there's a narrow-mindedness that is attached to our culture by this educated class who are these guys. So that is the foundation of some of our mindsets. And therefore, if you're westernized, then you are considered to have a modern outlook. I don't know how to define those things. I mean, we all understand that we are extremely well educated. Each one of the sentences we can actually focus and do a PhD on. But the point is, we all observe this. I'm just stating it for you. Similarly, how do you define a good school versus a bad school? My children are in 6th grade and 12 years old. And my wife and I had significant disagreements on how to raise them, especially the kind of school she won. But I always thought, how do you define a good school? I always wondered about that. The school that I studied, which was in Hindi or local Bajika medium in my village, I mean, instead of an apple falling from top to bottom, you can have a mango falling from top to bottom, right? And you can still describe the laws of nature that says, gravity means something falling down. But then unless you are teaching that, okay, 1600s, there's a guy called Newton who sat under the tree, till you have said all of those things, this comes with the cultural overheads. When you define this kind of a science. This science is not a neutral science. It comes with a cultural overhead that, this is what science is all about. And it was discovered by Newton. Before that, probably the earth was not even pulling anything at all. Something else I have observed, I'm also part of several school systems. I advise and help, but they don't listen anyway. The foundation of modern schooling system was happened 200 years or so ago when the Christians were ruling our country, and they set up some standards. They have their purpose, and they defined how a modern school should look like. Now, over time, there are large number of schools have come into our world, but they exceed even those traditional Christian schools in promoting the Western culture. I think they want to one up on those guys so that they're not branded as, they're falling behind. So they do one up on those things. So therefore, even if your children do not go to St. Peter or St. Xavier, they still would come out at even higher, level, converted than those schools. And I just wanted to share one more observation. Instruction in foreign language. India, of course, we take pride in instruction in foreign language. So if you are growing up in a small village, wherever outside Bangalore or in Bihar or anywhere, we all expect that the ultimate higher education should be, or even lower education, KG. Now even just after they're born, hey, how was my baby doing? So that happens in a foreign language. I just picked the names of the countries where people learn in foreign language. Of course, we lead because we are very large in population, so we are the largest in terms of economics. But if you look at the countries that they teach in foreign language, I actually had a list of countries that do not teach in foreign language, but I removed because, I didn't want to say China, Japan, Korea, USA, England, Germany, France. Pick any word, any country in the world. They learn in their own language. They may study another foreign language. However, they learn in their own language. They have references. They have cultural continuity. All of that is there, built into the system. Ours is not. We are running two different countries at the same go. Keep switching back and forth. If you And I also wanted to mention this. I didn't want to insult IIM Bangalore or IISc here, but none of institutions, no academic institution from these countries are ranked in top 200. IITs, my IIT is like 400 something. And when I joined IIT, we call, oh, you are the cream of the nation, #1 IIT in the country. And then say, oh, we are 453rd in the world. That doesn't even make sense. And the same way, you know, anyway, we'll talk about that maybe hopefully in the next one. So IIT graduates are too good for this country. I'm sorry? Well, well, at least something is going on. Otherwise, IT is never heard of. Because they're not ready. So IT graduates too good. I heard about this when I was studying, and I keep hearing it. And then, you know, ITs, you know, we come out of ITs, and the stuff we study, the kind of computer programming that we learned, or electrical engineering circuits that we made, or in the science that we studied, we were too good because we didn't have any organization in the country that was good enough for us. We always said, who, Hindustan Lever, only for marketing and sales. Then we did not have companies at that time which could actually use. So we were learning something that was not useful for the country. That's another philosophical discussion, why we bother teaching things which is not good for the country, but IITs do. And certainly did then. The gap was huge then. Now the gap is a little bit lower. But gap has always been very large. So IITs, so-called excellent education, ranked 453rd in the world, and therefore we export. We export almost everybody. Few of us who are around are considered exceptions. Oh, to India mein hai abhi tak, kind of thing. Excellence in education is judged by the number. Even go to, forget IITs or top 100, if you go to even a smaller institution, even in tier 2 towns, they have some sort of an office area that kind of promotes exporting students. They have GRE centers and train them, accents, English, and then of course, the whole idea of excellence in Indian education system is how well you are connected or how well you are upgraded to match to the so-called global. And global, when we say global, we mean European and American. We don't mean like Mexican or African or Chinese also. So that is our mindset. This is how our education system does to us. Something said, why do you come back? This is again my personal experience. I studied for several 10, 12 years, and I had a timeline that I'm going to go back after working for so many years. So when I came back with a vision that, okay, I'll work here, and then I'll join I wanted to join BGP and all that, so I did that. But the point is that when I came back, I had to look for a job, and my profile was IIT and MBA and Wall Street, so that profile was of a certain kind. So when I look for a job, the first time everybody asked, oh, so why do you come back? I said, I mean, what kind of question is that? This is my home. I mean, how you should ask those who have not coming back. Then say that, you know, why have you? Thank you. You leave your country, you go live somewhere else, and that is the default process for an IITian. And those who come back by design, then is considered an exception, which was offensive to me then, and of course, now I have kind of mellowed down. They don't ask me that much anymore. But it was certainly very offensive to them. I didn't know how to answer it, because it's common sense to me. So this thing was about education so far, 3-4 pages, about how I believe how our education system has been functioning. And then we talk about corporate jobs. So move into the corporate jobs, look at the culture and the communication and organization structure and how people work with each other. So typically, if you are in a corporation, you look at yourself as a darker version of an American person. Your image always thinking, okay, I'm making the decision, I'm driving this meeting, and you're imagining somebody else that you may have seen somewhere. And this is so common that even the terminologies that we use, the body language, sometimes it's made up. All of that relates to how an American culture would have done, a person from American culture would have worked and behaved. And therefore, in India, they do give you one day to wear Indian clothes, right? Typically, it's Diwali or someday or the other. Say, oh, today is an ethnic day. You're welcome to become an Indian today. Because otherwise, for the other days, your customers would be offended. It is like when you wear jacket and thing and speak in English, they didn't know. And now if you wear, Right. So if you were to wear a dhoti and typically what you would wear normally, like maybe 100 years ago what you wore, and you went to office and it's still the same programming, same everything else, the perception is that that's not a professional way of doing things. So who defines professionalism? How do clothes become a part of a professional expression? And I remember when I used to be an MD of a company here, 250 people, and I said, no, you can wear anything you want. You don't have to wear shoes. You can wear chappal. Because why would you wear a shoe? It was considered very revolutionary because, because people thought, you know what, it doesn't look like someone like you. Why are you doing it? You should be actually upgrading people even more. But you know, that is how our mindset is trained, that we keep thinking that these are the kind of expressions of professionalism. And there's one more thing that bothers me all the time is that, you know, Rama Navami or Krishna Ashtami, that's like not even a talk of a holiday to celebrate their birth, but of course you get one whole week for the other guy. Right. There is another perspective. Oh, I need to, just 1 second. There is another perspective on, I also mentioned a little earlier, is a professional company versus a lala company. So this is a very standard expression in this our corporate world. Oh, that company is just a lala company, I cannot believe this. And if you were to go a little bit deeper, you would never find anything that really significantly differentiates a lala company from a professional company. Now, it is possible that lala company owner wears a half shirt and maybe still wear shoes, but half shirt and no tie and a jacket, and that's called a lala company. It is not about business processes. It is not about business objectives and aligning your HR policies to certain bigger objective. None of that is there. It is simply about the outside expression of how the behavior of the owner. Now, there's another research topic I'll throw out at if any of you are doing PhDs, is that look at the rate of return a lala company gives to its shareholders than a professional called English speaking tie-wearing guy gives. Think about that. Who does better? Even in terms of work-life balance, I have seen no significant difference. Either way, we'll come to that. But the lala company is typically an Indian-owned company, and professional company is a foreign-owned company. This is one line of definition. And the next line I say, American, but I could say European also. American businesses are considered professional, or we don't know how to define professional. So we say, oh, you know what, whatever American companies do, I'm going to say that is professional. So the professionalism is defined by how American companies operate, behave, communicate, define their policies, define their processes. Those are considered professional. And then who decides these things? What is professional? Ultimately, since this IAM objective of any organization is to give suitable return on investment to its shareholders, right? That is one and possibly the only one definition of organization or corporation. Beyond that, everything else has to suit to that objective, where you define business processes, you define HR processes, you define resource management. All of that is aligned, put together to ultimately lead to a profitable return on investment. How does so-called professional and certain behavior comes in? It doesn't. But we make it look like it's because we all get to study right from your KG, ABCD, and Baba, Black Sheep, etc. Leads you to believe that professionalism is actually them. We are not professional. Just like those 200 years ago when schools were set up, they were telling us, you guys are uneducated, you believe in several gods, you don't know how to even talk properly. How am I going to give you a job if you cannot even speak my language? So the English speaking, then culture import, and therefore the perception of the professionalism is coming from that part to this part. This one is my project, which I have not yet done. Is you start out a salary of 4 or 5 lakhs per year, and at what salary you start liking pizza? So suppose you make like 1 lakh per month, then suddenly you say, hey, you know what, let's go for pizza. Till then, let's go for idli sambar, right? Or, but then you hit like a salary of 10 lakhs, then you suddenly like, okay, oh, we love pizza, but we don't like Domino's, we like to pizza. So though you have views and opinions of sometimes people develop deeper opinions on how the pizza is made so that they appear more organized and informed about it. And then you hit the salary of 20 lakhs, Then you start talking about pasta and the kind of wine that goes with it. So that money that you make detaches you from certain culture of yourself. Like you don't know, after 30 lakhs actually, you start eating sambar and rice with your cutlery, right? With your spoon and fork. Because that is how you need to upgrade yourself. This is how you. So our culture, our organization, and our behaviors, the corporate culture and our personal cultures sometimes get influenced by each other. So 3 more examples like this, then I'll come to the next part. This is, so on the left-hand side, I have described, typically if you read a newspaper or even somebody asks when you're traveling outside, say, hey, so how much is rupee, how much should I take? So rupees is 67 rupees for USA, so you start working backwards and calculate. So we are expressing rupees as a result of something being fixed, and rupees adjusting itself so that we can do the units correctly, right? So it is a foreign currency is equal to a certain number of currency in India, which is varying. USA, if you ask American, they know, say, oh, okay, my currency is, I don't know, depending on, they simply say, okay, my dollar is equal to 110 yens. We always adjust our currency so we can speak in terms of the other currency. It is a huge mindset issue that we never even realize that whoever is talking to, we are constantly adjusting ourselves so we can become like them, to give them benefit that, okay, you are German, so can I please have some German habits so that you don't like me? Sorry, so you like me more. So this is like a subservient way of expressing ourselves. This is a tiny, insignificant example, but everywhere. So rupee goes up. And so it says 69 goes to 67. And that's supposed to be going up. Because we are unconsciously thinking going up means down. So you understand all of this. This is how, I mean, in 20 years ago, 17, 18 years ago, I used to do lots of foreign joint ventures. And I always wrote my reports like that my rupee will be equal to whichever country. You decide, and it will change. So my rupee is equal to whatever. And my bosses would always say, wow, what's wrong with you? And I could never relate why they should insist. The other guy can insist, I can understand, but why should my Indian boss insist? All right, so this is probably my last slide on this. All of us, unless you grow up in a city or to a very affluent family where you're taken to school by a driver, most of us, like considering we are about 30 years and above on the average, I think average for sure, there was an Indian ethos, Indian culture. I'm just calling it an operating system because we are in Bangalore. So there was an Indian operating system, the way we spoke to each other, the way we interacted with each other, the way we visited our neighbor's home, the kids playing with each other, their whole social dynamics. All of that put together, the way we eat, the way we dress, all of that is a part of Indian ethos or Indian culture. I'm calling it an Indian operating system. And we also learned English. Those who studied in cities, they also learned English. So they're living in completely Indian life. And there's one tiny bit that says, okay, yeah, you also learn, you can also speak English. That is how my model for our country was that, you do everything Indian, but wherever you need to, you can invoke that one app called English. Now, I think cities have completely converted to the English OS. By that, I mean, we have converted ourselves in culture, the habits and the food and the behavior patterns and shoulder movement, all of that has become very Americanized or European. And English language happens to be a tiny app that we invoke when we're talking to servants or a taxi driver or an auto rickshaw driver, right? We never want to believe that we even know Indian languages anymore. And sometimes we deliberately say it so wrongly that we appear even higher upper class, right? More upper class. This is the biggest pain that I see, is that earlier English would have been fine. We would have spoken it like our parents used to, in case but our culture was Indian. And now the culture has changed, and Indian thing, Diwali, oh man, Diwali, okay, fine, get some whatever, and then tell me when you're ready, I'll spend a few minutes just doing my aarti and all that. So we invoke tiny bit of Indianness at certain occasions. The rest of the time we are not. So I just wanted to say this, because people who grew up with English, and I have huge issues with them. So imagine their plight when China becomes so much more powerful. And then the Britishers are down already, so only remaining country that is still standing is US. If US becomes number 3 economy, which actually already is number 2 economy, we may become number 2 soon. what language would we learn? Should we go back to speaking Kannada because we have become more richer than USA, or we should probably learn Chinese? And then NRI should start focusing on learning Chinese so they can export themselves. All right. So essentially, what I see is that Indian education system is intended to uproot Indian traditions. And I mean, by that I mean like the urban English medium type, and eliminate Indian science, technology, references, narratives, all kinds. We never say that, we all believe that till the Newton discovered there was no gravity. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but there have been tons of references of this kind from forever and ever in our scriptures and our laws, I mean, our Vedas and possibly many other places. However, Indian would not refer to those, but would refer to the European thing. These things happen because of our education system. And similarly, intellectual pursuits of even institutions such as IIM and IISc and IITs have to be consistent with Christians and Western beliefs, because they define what is the right research to do. They define what is the standard of a certain quality of research. And if you are inconsistent, then either you don't get published in their journals, or even if you publish in Indian journals, you already know Indian journals and who reads them anyway. So ultimately, you forced to align to them. Economic theories use parameters of the West. When I say parameters, economic theories are, I think I have mentioned it in the next page. Economic theories are not pure science, right? Pure science is when the apple will positively fall down. But economic theories is like a rules of thumb. Okay, if three parameters will interact with each other in a certain way, that's a theory of economics. So the parameters of the three parameters, like demand and supply and the money supply in the economy, such things like that, are the parameters of the West, because they defined their theories to suit their economic needs at that time, and that too they keep challenging all the time. We continue to use theirs, and we get frustrated because it doesn't seem to work anymore. So you end up publishing in foreign things anyway. And when we talk about India, India is invoked, even in IIM, as an example. Oh, for example, in India this happened. I said, man, you are living in India. You're teaching to everybody who's Indian. Why do you use India just as an for example rather than as a default? Shouldn't the reference to India would be the primary reference, and using Kenya or Nigeria or USA should be, and there should be examples. Our default should be India, but that doesn't happen. And this is exactly what I believe our rulers had wanted earlier, that finally convert everybody into believing their being system. So the conflict that I see is being an Aboriginal Indian, like the people who are true Indians, non-converted, continue to believe in our traditions, and you continue to still be positioning yourself as an educated person and professionally successful. I don't see many or any top company taking a political stand on anything. You should. Why shouldn't they? Political stand is an opinion. You can very well come to office in a dhoti with a chandan and say, fine, I'm going to make my decisions the same way. You don't need to tighten your thing with the tie, and then suddenly the blood starts flowing differently. It doesn't happen that way. So it's a huge conflict. It's a very significant conflict, actually, that in how can I be Indian and yet be successful? Let me just say this to you very quickly. I don't know, actually, forgot the initial timing. Oh, good. All right. So a few years ago, I love Thailand for many reasons. But I keep, every time this is like an educational exercise for me. And so 20 years ago, 19, 18 years ago, I was there for a business for 2 weeks. And I was entering a mall. Then I saw 3 black Mercedes S600, which is like 2 crores or something here. 3 of them. And then teenager girls came out of it wearing really tiny skirts. Like maybe they were 15 years or so on the average. And they all came out, once they came out, they all did such a pranam like this to each other. To each other, not like an elderly person, but to each other. And they're all like 15, 16-year-old girls. I said, you are rich. You're not supposed to do such things. You're supposed to say, hey, what's up, dude? Or, talk like that, rather than do a pranam or something. But nobody told them that this is not a good thing to do. They continue to be rich and yet be cultured. And nobody's breaking their temples there. I mean, if you have to go to Ayodhya, you go there. Our Ayodhya is gone, right? So their Ayodhya has a lot more temples. And So this is a huge conflict, and we have to figure out how to deal with it. To me, this is like one-liner problem statement. So I think I may have mentioned some of this before, is that Indian business schools are busy working on their academic and European ratings. So there's every university, you have to go through certain ratings, QS and economic things. There are 3, 4 of them, and they rate all the business institutions. And Indians never appear in many of them. So our Indian academic institutions are constantly working hard to copy what Harvard or Stanford or MIT, Sloan, they do, so that they'll become like one of them. So the whole objective of setting up these kind of institutions was to do something, right? Not to become a copycat of somebody else, but that's what they do, because that's where